Chapter 773, As long as it makes you suffer. Children are always like that, they have weak immune systems. So, there's no need to worry. After falling pregnant, Longji had become an expert in this aspect. Either way, your family has so many people to help you take care of the kids. Your worries are uncalled for. Tangning looked at the two sleeping rascals with a worrying look. No matter how many people they had at home to take care of them, no one could take the place of their mother. Regardless of everything, she would always worry about her babies. After filming at the Forensic Concubine, Tangning visited director Chen Feng once at the hospital. Seeing that his leg was recovering, she felt a lot more relieved. I originally thought that the broadcast of The Forensic Concubine would be affected because there are a few important scenes that haven't been filmed yet. I never expected President Mo to adjust the sequence of events so that the drama would end on the climactic scene where Junlin is forced to step down from his throne. There's actually 10 episodes left to film. What a pity, Director Chen Feng said regretfully. Because that last little bit wasn't filmed, we couldn't broadcast it. Everyone felt that the ending created a unique vibe. Although it wasn't as complete as the novel, it's still a great production, Tangning replied with a smile. Director Chen Feng also smiled before he looked at Tangning seriously. Does Director Chen have something to say? Director Chen Feng pulled out a script from under his pillow and handed it to Tangning. He then said in a very careful voice, I recommended you for this production. If you take part in this film, I think your portrayal would make it extremely spectacular. Tangning looked at the script. The film was called A Survivor. This film is based on a true story about a plane crash that happened in Beijing 20 years ago. I've read through the script already. The main character is well-rounded and intriguing. That's why I recommended you go home and look through it in detail before you make a decision. Thank you, Director Chen. Probably, throughout the entire film, you won't get the chance to wear a single piece of clean clothing or eat a decent meal, and let's not even talk about your appearance. You're going to appear like a crazy woman. A lot of actresses are too afraid to take on this role, in fear that their image would be destroyed. But, I believe in you. Director Chen Feng believed that the Tangning that changed careers to acting, would not worry about her image if she came across a good role. I will take a good look at the script. Tangning gave Chen Feng her sincere promise. But, unlike before, the feeling of holding this script was heavy. This was a film based on a true story. If she accepted the role, she would have a new mission entrusted upon her. It felt like a huge responsibility. A disaster film like this was similar to AWH, but also had its differences. AWH relied on imagination and created a visual impact and experience. But A Survivor was different. This was a true story. It had happened before. So, her aim was to make it feel realistic. However, Tangning had no idea that A Survivor was about to set a new record for box office sales and she was to reach new heights because of this film. But, of course, that was to happen a little later. After returning home, Tangning handed the script to Mo Ting. Old Chen, give this to me. Mo Ting put down the documents in his hand and had a flip through the script. Old Chen really understands you. So you agree that I should film A Survivor? What reason do I have to reject it? Mo Ting asked. Tangning didn't know why, but the thought of taking on this film made her excited. She even walked into the nursery to hug and kiss her babies. Others may not have understood why, but Mo Ting understood Tangning's every thought. A Survivor posed a good challenge and was an extremely attractive role for Tangning. In fact, Mo Ting had a feeling this film was going to make Tangning into the indisputable queen of the film industry. A Survivor was produced by the National Film Association and was affiliated with the Beijing government. So, when they were recruiting actors, they clearly noted that the pay was going to be low and the main actor's image may be ruined. With such a depressing topic and a variety of restrictions, plenty of actresses turned the other way. But, Tangning, straight out agreed to it, without any requests regarding pay or image. As a result, they officially announced that Tangning was the female lead of A Survivor. But, this was within most people's expectations. When it came to a challenging role like this, Tangning was expected to jump at it even if she had to be old, ugly and receive no pay. In fact, she may even pay for it instead. So, the public came to a conclusion about Tangning. No wonder she managed to receive everyone's acknowledgement in such a short amount of time. As long as there is a good script, she would go for it regardless of the consequences. Tang Ning has a thirst for good scripts. Of course, this also means that we are guaranteed a good script. Ha ha. An actress like Tang Ning should be classified as a national treasure. We never have to worry about her repeating the same role, so her projects always fill us with anticipation. Most people in the industry had high hopes for Tang Ning's participation in A Survivor. But, of course, there were a few that disliked it. I refuse to believe that there is really an actress who doesn't care about her image. Just wait for it. I'm sure Tang Ning will regret it. For a film like this, if an actress doesn't portray it well, she will be destroying her career. It's no surprise if she ends up being flooded with criticism. Does she really think that she's a national treasure actress? Isn't she overestimating herself? Regardless of everything else, the news of Tang Ning filming A Survivor attracted a huge amount of reactions. Meanwhile, Broken Bar, what was Bayu doing at this time? Ever since she discovered Bai Linlin and her husband having an affair, she didn't seem to hate Tang Ning as much as before. No matter how much she hated Tang Ning, at least Tang Ning never stole her husband or broke apart her family. Yet, Bai Linlin, her own sister, she actually, thinking of what had happened, Bayu felt extremely disgusted, especially since, after things were laid out on the table, Bai Linlin and her husband, Jeff, had become even more fearless in front of her. Yet, as a public figure, there was nothing she could do to get justice for herself. While the mood hasn't gone sour yet, it's best that you sign our divorce papers. Otherwise, both of us will only look bad. Bayu wanted to kick Jeff out of the house, but the house belonged to him, so she had no right. Yet, if she was to leave, she was sure that Bai Linlin would claim ownership of the place without feeling any sense of guilt. If that happened, she would be dreaming if she thought she could ever return again a Broken Bar. I've never seen someone cheat in such a proud and bold way. Even if I break up with Linlin, I can't continue to be with you. I can, as long as it makes you suffer, I can do anything. Chapter 774. If they want to keep the child, they must be dreaming. At this time, Bai Linlin sauntered out of the bedroom and said to Bayu, "Sis, is it necessary for you to be like this? Shut your mouth. You have no right to speak." Bayu growled. "Jeff has wanted to be a father for a long time, but, for the sake of your career, you've never had a child for him." "Well, it doesn't matter now because he has me. You can continue focusing on your career while I take good care of him," Bai Linlin said as she leaned into Jeff's arms and flaunted her prowess. Bayu glared at Bai Linlin for some time. Finally, through her gritted teeth, she yelled, "Slut!" "Sign the papers." Jeff once again shoved the divorce papers in front of Bayu and forcefully pulled her hand towards the section that needed to be signed. "Get lost, you adulterers, you couple of cheating dogs, you're practically not human." Bayu screamed loudly as she tore the divorce papers apart and threw the pen in her hand to the side. "You'll need to sign it sooner or later." Jeff glared at Bayu patiently before he headed back into the bedroom with Bai Linlin in his arms, right in front of Bayu's eyes. Bayu threw things at the door in anger. The hatred in her heart was already through the roof. She never imagined that a lame novel plot would happen to her in real life. When the story was about someone else, it was easy to laugh, but when it happened to her, she wanted so badly to kill the cheap couple inside the room. They were so cheap. If they wanted to keep the child, they were dreaming. She knew Bai Linlin better than anyone. She was young, vain and enjoyed being sought after. As a result, making Bai Linlin lose her baby didn't seem like such a hard task. With this thought, Bayu pulled out her phone and gave a familiar person a phone call. Soon, Bai Linlin received a phone call inviting her to an audition. An audition. Bai Linlin never expected that someone would still remember her. So, she happily told Jeff, "Honey, I will be attending a banquet tomorrow night because a director invited me to take part in his film." As soon as Jeff heard this, he immediately scolded, "You're currently pregnant. How can you go film anything?" Tang Ning also acted while she was pregnant. "Why can't I?" "Don't worry, I will take good care of our baby. Just let me meet with the director. Even if it's just a quick meeting, it would at least satisfy my dream." Bai Linlin pressed her palms together sincerely. "I promise I won't accept the job. I'm just going to have dinner. Simply knowing that someone remembers me is enough. After we move to the US, all you have to do is give birth to the baby. Afterwards, I can also find something for you to act in and make you famous. Why must you be so impatient? Although Jeff liked Bei Linlin's youthful body, her thoughts often made him pull his hair out in frustration. Hubby, just let me go. As you wish. Jeff was helpless as he opened the door and left. However, Bei Linlin had no idea that she had fallen into Beiyu's trap. So, the next day in the afternoon, just as she left the house, she deliberately flaunted in front of Beiyu. I don't think anyone would want to work with my sis at the moment, would they? After all, her perfect image has been destroyed. But, what should I do, sis? Director Ken invited me to an audition. Although it's just a small role, doesn't that mean I at least have half a chance and you have none? Bei Linlin circled around in front of Beiyu as she scanned her from top to bottom. Sorry, sis, I didn't mean to steal everything from you. But, I like brother-in-law too much. So, I think you should just let go. Otherwise, you will be even more pitiful than you are now. I can guarantee that. After speaking, Bei Linlin left the house. Meanwhile, Beiyu's gaze followed her with deep meaning. Jeff had no way of stopping Bei Linlin, because if he did, they would end up in an argument. This was one aspect which he would never understand about women. Bei Linlin was obviously pregnant, yet she still wanted to attend a banquet. Director Ken liked Beiyu, so he did this favor for her and invited Bei Linlin. Accompanying him were a few other members of staff. Bei Linlin felt like she was being valued and actually thought that someone wanted her in their film, so even when they forced her to drink, she accepted every glass that came her way. This was because she didn't want to reveal that she was pregnant. If they found out, not only would she lose her chance at an audition, they would likely turn around and leave straight away. So, that night, Bei Linlin drank a decent amount of spirits and arrived home stinking of alcohol. Jeff immediately erupted in anger as he grabbed Bei Linlin's wrist and asked, "Did you drink alcohol?" "I only drank a little bit," Bei Linlin mumbled in an annoyed tone. However, before she knew it, Jeff threw a slap across her face. "Ugh, you crazy woman. You're pregnant, yet you drink alcohol? Do you have no common sense?" "So what if I drink alcohol? Isn't the baby fine in the end?" Jeff let out a cold laugh. He suddenly realized that both the Bei sisters, whether big or small, were not normal. So, he decided to ignore Bei Linlin. But, a little while later, Bei Linlin suddenly clutched her stomach and began to cry. Jeff, my stomach hurts." Jeff looked down at Bei Linlin and realized she was already sitting in a pool of blood. From the looks of it, the baby was gone. The baby hadn't even formed yet and this bitch went out drinking. Didn't she deserve this pain? "Jeff, save me, it hurts." However, Jeff did not do a thing as he shook off her hand and said, "Save you? Who could you blame for drinking while you're pregnant? Bitch, you're the same as your sister. You are both sluts. Since you didn't listen to me, I'm not going to save you. You can fend for yourself." After speaking, Jeff left the room, leaving Bei Linlin lying on the floor, crying in pain. Soon, Beiyu appeared in the doorway. As soon as she saw the scene in front of her, a smile appeared on her face. "Sis, save me, save me." "Of course I'll save you. But first, I want you to have a good taste of this pain." Beiyu crossed her arms and stood quietly in the doorway until Bei Linlin fainted from the pain. Only then did she call the ambulance. Afterwards, Bei Linlin was sent to the hospital. Of course, the child could not be saved. But, more importantly, she ended up attracting a whole heap of reporters. This time, Beiyu did not avoid the questions as she answered the reporters honestly. She did not take everything into consideration and tread carefully like she did in the past. This time, she decided to be herself. Chapter 775, She Deserved to Have a Miscarriage. Beiyu, may we ask if Bei Linlin actually had a miscarriage? Did she fall pregnant out of wedlock? Can you tell us who the father is? Under normal circumstances, whenever reporters asked such sharp questions, no artist ever responded because it was too bad-mannered. So, the reporters never expected Beiyu to actually answer. Most of their questions were simply used to create an effect. However, while facing the black sea of cameras, Beiyu broke her initial silence. "That's right, Bei Linlin was pregnant." After hearing her answer, the reporters looked at each other and continued asking, "In that case, who is the father? How did Bei Linlin have a miscarriage? Why did she have a miscarriage?" After hearing these questions, Bayu felt quite amused. She's a homewrecker, so she deserves to have a miscarriage. The reporters had never seen Bayu like this before. She always maintained a kind image in front of the cameras and displayed a high IQ, but for some reason, this time, Bayu spoke with no restraint, like she had turned into another person. Bei Linlin was a homewrecker that deserved to have a miscarriage. Even if that was true, Bei Linlin was still her sister. Didn't Bayu's heart ache at all? Miss Bei, could you explain it in more detail? Whose family did Bei Linlin step her foot into? After hearing this question, Bayu gestured for the cameras to point towards Bei Linlin. Please point your cameras towards that person and remember the consequences of ruining another person's family. She didn't ruin an outsider's family, she ruined her own sister's family. While I wasn't around, she seduced my husband and had an affair with him. After I return home, I will officially announce my divorce. I know this announcement will turn me into a laughingstock in the industry, so I won't be sticking around. I will be returning to the US. But, before I leave, I hope to see these two adulterers get their deserved scolding and punishment. Although Bei Linlin is my sister, I have no intention to forgive her for what she's done. In fact, from now onwards, she will no longer be my sister. As for the details of how she cheated, I think it's best if you ask her yourself. From now on, I hope you can leave me alone. I don't want anything, except for peace. I hope you can fulfill this simple request. After speaking, Bayu pushed away the reporters in front of her and left the hospital with her chest held high. She had wanted to cause trouble like this for a long time, for a very long time. A broken bar. After putting on an act for so long and after so many years, she had had enough. So, the current situation came at exactly the right time. Plus, she was actually convinced by Tangning. Not only did Tangning know how to be a proper person and have good acting skills, she never did anything wrong to anyone. So, her life was honest and forthright. In comparison, Bayu had done so many incorrect things that discovering her husband cheating, felt a little like she deserved it. Perhaps, she had really done too many wrong things. After being honest this time, she actually felt a lot more relaxed. Soon, Bayu returned home to pack her bags. But, Jeff suddenly appeared in the living room and tried to stop her. Honey, what are you trying to do? Bei Linlin is at the hospital. You should go visit her. Wifey, I was wrong. Jeff took a couple steps back and plopped down on his knees. Unfortunately, it's too late, Bayu replied coldly. You and Bei Linlin, the slut, can huddle up together and I've already signed our divorce papers. After saying what she needed to say, Bayu dragged her luggage behind her and left. Meanwhile, the man behind her flipped a chair in regret. It had ended. Everything had come to an end. After preparing all her luggage, Bayu returned to the US. But, before she left, she wrote Tangning a note. After receiving the note at Hyrule, Moting took it home to show Tangning. It was odd to receive something from one's enemy, but nevertheless, Tangning opened the envelope to see the contents of the note. It actually wasn't much. The note simply read, You've won. You've won fair and square. It seems, Bayu has truly suffered a huge blow. She was betrayed twice, so the pain is definitely deep, Moting explained seriously. He remembered how Tangning had changed into a different person in the past because of Han Yufan's betrayal and started afresh. So, the power of hatred could not be underestimated. Bayu is smart, she'll pull through this obstacle quickly. Tangning put down the envelope. Of course, she continued to pay close attention to Bei Linlin's fate. At this moment, the hospital was already completely surrounded. Bei Linlin was all on her own, so after waking up, all she could do was stare at the mirror in a daze. Everything had been exposed. For a girl in her early 20s, being scolded by the entire nation for being a mistress, was not something that an average person could handle. Worst of all was the jerk that had hurt the two sisters. The industry is such a mess. Bayu was only on a TV program a few days ago and now she's about to retreat from the industry. The feeling of being betrayed by her own sister must be difficult to handle. Bei Linlin is such a beach. How could she seduce her brother-in-law behind her sister's back? If I was in Bayu's position, I would make her life a living hell. But, wasn't Bayu trying to keep up her kind girl next door image? It seems, as soon as she caught her sister and husband cheating, she couldn't be bothered putting on an act anymore. The two sisters aren't anything good, but Bai Linlin is even worse than Baiyu. According to Long Ji, after Baiyu left Beijing, her jerk husband also flew back to the US and Bai Linlin became known as a tramp. Without staying in the hospital for long, Bai Linlin ended up disappearing without a trace. It seemed, she couldn't handle the pressure and decided to hide. A few days later, it was rumored that Bai Linlin had gone crazy. Of course, whether it was true or she was putting on an act, she only had herself to blame. In comparison, Chen Xinyun's career was advancing a lot more steadily. However, no one's path was ever smooth sailing. Chen Xinyun was lucky thanks to Zihao's impressive efforts. Recently, she had been receiving roles that were more and more important and her screen time had increased. However, in comparison to Tang, she still had a long way to go. Turn down any jobs that you have tonight. Let's go on a secret date. And Zihao noticed that Chen Xinyun had been working really hard recently and didn't whine about getting compensation, so he decided to agree. Chen Xinyun was filled with joy as she rushed off to make preparations. But, just as she opened her front door, she was shocked by the man standing in the doorway. The man that had disappeared from her life since she was 6 years old was suddenly alive and well in front of her, holding onto the hand of a 10-or-so-year-old boy. Xinyun. Chen Xinyun didn't understand what was happening in front of her. She simply stood frozen in place until Zihao finally approached her from behind and held onto her. How did you find this place? Chapter 776, The Sick Moting. The filming conditions of Survivor were tough as expected. In order to film it well, apart from taking care of her babies, Tangning's remaining time was spent on training her body. As a result, she began to look more and more healthy and the abs on her stomach became more and more apparent. After the incident with Baiyu, peace was slowly restored to the entertainment industry in Beijing. While preparing for her role, Tangning updated her fans, every now and then, on her status. However, 1 month before the filming of Survivor, Moting experienced a few episodes of tinnitus due to stress. Moting wanted to keep it a secret, so of course, Tangning was unaware of this. At the same time, Lu Che had taken some time off to accompany Long Ji during her labor, so Moting was the only one that knew of his own condition. That night, after feeding the babies, Tangning stood behind Moting and mentioned that Chen Xinyun's father had suddenly returned. However, to her surprise, Moting did not respond. So, Tangning yelled a couple of times questioningly. But, not only did Moting not hear a thing, as he leaned against one of the cribs, he slowly fell asleep. Seeing this, Tangning's heart ached. To the outside world, Moting was the decision maker at Hyrule. From morning to night, there were a countless number of decisions waiting for him to make. Yet, when he returned home, he was the father of 2 children and needed to provide help at any time. Tangning had to feed the babies every few hours and he accompanied by her side every single time. Wasn't he tired? Tangning put down the baby in her hands and approached Moting's side. But, just as she reached out her hand to touch the man, she realized he hadn't simply fallen asleep. His entire body was heating up. It was winter and the temperature was cold even though they had the heater on. So, Tangning felt bad when she thought about the way that Moting had woke up multiple times throughout the night to take care of Gogo. Therefore, she immediately gave Xia Yuling a phone call and asked her to come over to help with the kids. After Xia Yuling arrived, the 2 women worked together to carry Moting up to the bedroom. Stop focusing on yourself all the time. You should take care of Moting too. The kids are important, but does that mean the father isn't important? Xia Yuling nagged. From the moment you guys got married, Moting has not lacked in any aspect. You should take good care of his body. He works all day, yet he still has to worry about you when he gets home. I understand, Mom. I'll leave the babies with you then. Take good care of him. After nagging, Xia Yuling headed downstairs to take care of her 2 grandsons. Tangning immediately started changing Moting's clothes and wiped him down. She then tried all different methods to help him lower his body temperature. But, he did not wake up and continued sleeping soundly. As she watched Moting sleep, Tangning began to reflect on herself. All along, Moting had endured too much for her. Yet, she was beginning to take it for granted. They were a married couple, so she never believed a man was born to protect a woman or to dote on a woman because no relationship ever lasted based on one-sided doting. Other women dreamed of finding a rich and handsome guy to dote on them for the rest of their lives, But, love was based on reciprocation. If one side kept giving and enduring for a long period of time, the relationship was bound to come to an end. Men easily got tired too. So, the reason why Tang Ning received so much love from Mo Ting was closely related to the fact that she was endlessly striving to improve and equally doted on him. After all, Mo Ting was well aware that Tang Ning was also willing to sacrifice anything for him, even her life. Only when two people took each other into consideration would their relationship endure the test of time. Love was unforgiving towards selfishness. Originally, with Mo Ting's level of tiredness, Tang Ning did not expect him to wake up, but, suddenly at 2 a.m., he jolted awake and shocked Tang Ning, who was sitting beside the bed. "What's wrong?" Seeing that Tang Ning was awake, Mo Ting sat up and looked around. After a few seconds, he finally asked, "Why are you still awake? Did you know that you had a fever?" Tang Ning stood up from the sofa and leaned into Mo Ting's arms. "Did you know that you scared me?" "I'm fine. I've just been a little busy lately." "Why did you suddenly wake up?" Tang Ning did not believe him. It was obviously because he had stayed awake the precious night that he caught a cold and had a fever. "We normally feed the rascals at this time," Mo Ting sighed. "It's probably become a part of my body clock, so my body naturally woke up at this time." After hearing this, tears began to flow from Tang Ning's eyes. "How could you have so much love to give to our sons and I? Did you know that I am already drowning in your love?" "So, the kids. Mom is taking care of them," Tang Ning replied. "Tomorrow, I'm going to get Luce to book us tickets to the Maldives. Let's go and relax for a few days." "I'm fine." "You need some rest," Tang Ning said in a serious tone. "I'm not discussing this with you. I'm telling you to listen to me, okay?" Mo Ting looked deeply into Tang Ning's eyes. In the end, he pulled her into his arms and replied, "Give me some time to distribute my work, okay?" "Okay," Tang Ning nodded. Sometimes, Tang Ning wondered if Mo Ting was so tired because she was too unrestrained. If she hadn't chosen to return to filming and remained at home to take care of him and the kids, would things be a lot easier for him? So, after a survivor, Tang Ning had other plans. Mo Ting looked down at Tang Ning and noticed there was something odd about the look in her eyes. Even in his current state, he was able to see through her with one look. "Don't think that I don't know what you're thinking. Don't even think about returning to life at home," Mo Ting warned as he wrapped his arm around Tang Ning's neck. Of course, Mo Ting would always be Mo Ting. Even though he was sick, he was still the domineering black-bellied king. Tang Ning looked at Mo Ting in surprise. She then rubbed her cheek against his neck to confirm that his fever was gone before she let out a sigh of relief. "You were born to be an actress. I won't let you have any alternative ideas. In that case, you need to guarantee that you will never get sick again," Tang Ning threatened. "You must know how much my heart aches because of you." After hearing this, Mo Ting hugged Tang Ning tightly in his arms. In this long and slow lifetime, he had once felt that time was difficult to endure. But, ever since being in love with Tang Ning, he felt that even if he was given another 100 years, he would not find it hard to endure at all. So, Tang Ning wanted to go to the Maldives, right? When he thought about it, the two of them hadn't gone on a vacation for a long time. But, of course, if the couple knew that a big incident would happen to those close to them while they were gone, then Tang Ning wouldn't have been in such a rush to go overseas. Meanwhile, Chan Zenyan's father had returned. However, Chan Zenyan did not feel an ounce of joy. Not only had her father remarried, he even had a 10-year-old son. In fact, she was too scared to reveal this to Bai Liu because, "Zenyan, I'm sorry, but I need money." Chapter 777, You Are the Murderer's Daughter. "If you need money, why don't you earn it yourself?" Chan Zenyan questioned. "Don't talk to your father like that," and Zihao nudged Chan Zenyan's elbow, reminding her not to say something wrong and hurt herself in the process. "Am I not right? My father went missing when I was 6 years old. He got into an accident and couldn't find his way home. Can't you just let me continue believing that?" Chan Zenyan asked the man in front of her with teary eyes. In reality, it was obviously not an accident for a person to go missing without a single clue. Chan Zenyan had understood this long ago. "Zenyan, I understand that you are a big star now and you have money. So, please save your brother. If it wasn't because I had no choice, I would not be showing myself in front of you. The man looked old with a pair of reading glasses, his hand clasped tightly to the quiet little boy beside him, with no intention of letting go for even a second. Chen Xinyan did not reply. After a short moment, Zihao said to Father Chen, I think you should go home for now. Father Chen understood that it was hard for Chen Xinyan to comprehend everything that was happening in front of her, so he sighed before leaving with the little boy. What right does he have? If you didn't have hope in your father, you wouldn't be so upset. Stay here, I'll go check if he has a place to stay. Chen Xinyan opened her mouth to tell Zihao not to bother, but the words would not leave her lips. In the end, she simply said, I am going to go to work. After escorting the father and son to a hotel, Zihao helped them pay for a room. Father Chen looked at Zihao and almost dropped down on his knees after entering the room. Please convince Chen Xinyan to help me. To be honest, you have not upheld your responsibility as a father, so you can't turn the situation around and expect Chen Xinyan to do anything for you. Father Chen understood this well, so he stood up and sighed, Isn't she pushing us to our death then? How much do you need? Father Chen was stunned for a moment before he finally replied, $1 million. This is my son's medical records. I can give you the money under one condition. Never appear in front of Xinyan and her mother again. As long as I can save my son, I will definitely keep my distance from them. Father Chen agreed. After confirming the medical records, Zihao threw the documents aside. He really wanted to tell the man that if he could resolve the matter with money, he preferred not to open his heart to him. For a man that was willing to abandon his wife and daughter, he had no heart to begin with. However, he had no idea that his generous gesture this time would lead to a huge crisis. The next afternoon, Tangning and Moting boarded a flight to the Maldives, while the two babies were left temporarily in Ziyuling and Beilahua's care. The two mothers had a great relationship with each other and were almost like sisters. Beilahua even slept over at the Tang family home every now and then. As a result, the two families were like one big family. This time, Chen Xinyan decided not to tell Beilahua no about Father Chen because she didn't know how to bring it up. At the same time, she was afraid that her mother would be hurt a second time, so she simply mentioned it briefly to Tangning. Tangning did not take it to heart, so she had no idea that Chen Xinyan was about to go through an extremely painful experience. 2 afternoons later, Chen Xinyan was in the middle of filming a program when a huge car accident occurred in Beijing. A middle-aged man had been driving under the influence of alcohol and drugs, resulting in a 7-car pileup. 2 people died on the scene, 3 were seriously injured and 4 suffered light injuries. The news sources quickly investigated the background of the perpetrator and discovered that his name was Chen Tanhao. According to the police, this man was the father of the popular artist, Chen Xinyan. On that day, Zihao was discussing an endorsement contract for Chen Xinyan, so Little Seven accompanied her instead. The police contacted Little Seven and Little Seven waited until Chen Xinyan finished her program before she rushed over to tell her, something happened. We need to visit the police station. What happened? Chen Xinyan was afraid that something had happened to Zihao. But, when Little Seven showed her the news, she was a little shocked but pretended not to care. He hit someone. What does that have to do with me? The police have requested for you to visit the police station because Uncle Chen recently received a sum of money from an anonymous bank account. The police want to confirm it. What money? Chen Xinyan was confused because she had no idea that Zihao had given Father Chen money. After arriving at the police station, Chen Xinyan was immediately stopped in her track by the family members of the car accident victims. Give my parents back their lives. Give my brother back his life. Although Chen Xinyan understood how they were feeling, what did this matter have to do with her? I'm sorry, this has nothing to do with me. How does it have nothing to do with you? You are the murderer's daughter. I haven't had a father since I was 6 years old. Over the years, I have been a fatherless child. How do you expect me to take responsibility? Chen Xinyan asked. No yelling in the police station. Chen Xinyan, come in for your interrogation. A police officer noticed a commotion outside and immediately stepped out to scold them before taking Chen Xinyan into the interrogation room. I'm sure you've heard about what happened to your father, right? The officer asked. I've looked into the matter and am aware that your father contacted you a few days ago. I do not have a father, Chen Xinyan replied straightforwardly. After a short pause, she began to explain. He suddenly appeared the other day asking for money to save his son, but I ignored him. In that case, how do you explain this sum of money that he received from Mr. Nzihao's account?" the officer asked. Chen Zinyan received the transaction record from the officer's hand and confirmed that the money was indeed from Nzihao. This idiot, why did he try to clean up after her without her knowing? Did you know, because of this sum of money, Chen Tanhao went to buy a sports car. He then indulged in alcohol, gambling and drugs and got into fights. There was nothing he wouldn't do. Because of this sum of money, he had the finances to commit a crime. He bought drugs and drove under the influence of alcohol, ruining the lives of 6 families. After hearing this, Chen Zinyan's eyes grew wide in shock as she immediately explained, "That's right. I asked my manager to transfer this money to him because I didn't want him to hassle me anymore. But, I simply transferred him money. Did I commit a crime? In the end, I transferred him money because I thought he was using it to save someone. I had no idea that he had another purpose for it." The officer glanced at Chen Zinyan and shook his head. "I'm afraid your conscience won't be at peace for the rest of your life." At that moment, tears began rolling out of Chen Zinyan's eyes. However, she quickly wiped them away and gave Bai Liu a phone call. In the end, she simply said to the officer, "I'll leave everything in the hands of the authorities."
Hit the like, thumbs up button and subscribe to my channel. Thank you for listening.